So Alistair, I think, wins the award for if you travelled to the session, then you'd win the award for the distance travelled to be the highest. But unfortunately, it's all virtual. But Alistair's joining us from Northern Ireland, so thank you so much. I won't say any more. So you can introduce yourself. But as I said before, the purpose of Alistair talking to us is just to start getting us thinking about geography and fieldwork and all things geographical to set our minds ready for the rest of the meeting. So thank you, Alistair. I'll mute my microphone if you're all okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Samuel Johnson before, but he very famously said this about a location not too far away from where I am right now. It's worth going, he said. It's just not worth going to see. And what was the location that he's referring to? Well, it was this location here where I love to go, and this is a photograph of me pretty much the first time I was able to get out after lockdown restrictions were eased a little bit in Northern Ireland. This is, of course, the Giant's Causeway. Now, I happen to disagree with the good doctor. I think that it is not only worth seeing, but it's absolutely worth going to see, and it was exactly where I wanted to go immediately the lockdown eased up. But it did make me think, as I've been reflecting a little bit over the last few weeks about the role of fieldwork. Does the same kind of quotation apply with fieldwork? Is it worth doing, but just with all of the pressures that we're facing, not worth going to do? Well, I disagree. I think it is worth doing, and it is worth going to do. And I just want to give you 4 very quick points that maybe help you to think that through a little bit more. The first one is this: experiencing the particularity of a place matters. This time 3 years ago, this is where I was standing. Now, I don't know if you know whereabouts in the world this is, but I picked this particularly carefully because you as a group of geographers will recognize some features there, but this location is going to look a little bit odd. It's not something that we're used to seeing. This is in the Faroe Islands, and the Faroe Islands, like County Antrim, where I come from, has a volcanic past. So when I was standing there looking down at my feet, it looked very, very similar to County Antrim, where I'm used to seeing. But when I looked up, the geology might be very similar, but the geomorphology was like nothing I see back at home. And this location in particular was somewhere that I wanted to visit because it just looked so bizarre and surreal to me. I couldn't figure out when I was looking at the photographs how a place like this could actually exist. Now, the reason why I wanted to show that to you is because I want you to have hopefully a bit of a sense of curiosity about this location. This is geography, but maybe geography not as you've seen it. And the reason why I want to suggest that is because I think part of the reason why we take our students out into the countryside and out into the field to do the field work is to try and get something of a similar reaction to them. Our subject is spatially contextualized. It goes from the specific locations and it comes up with all its theories, but these theories need to be contextualized back again in the specific location. And there's something particularly special about that convergence of factors that are unique to any particular location. To take the students there and to see what is this unique coming together in this location, what makes it different from any other location. The second point is this: okay, that's all very good and noble, but we are under incredible constraints at the moment. We can't travel very far necessarily to do this kind of thing. So are there other options? I'm going to suggest yes, there are, because we may want to take our students very far afield and amaze them by locations like the Faroe Islands, but geography happens right outside the front door, right beside our schools, and there are hyperlocal virtual options for you to be able to follow as well. Now, all I'm going to do at this stage is point you towards a resource that I'll share with you at the end from a webinar that was run yesterday by Jason Swale and Katie Hall from Esri UK, who looked at some examples from a school in South London. They just picked a random school and they showed you how you could do some hyperlocal fieldwork, collect that data, present it in the ArcGIS software, and do some really useful and very meaningful geographical investigation with your pupils right where you are. It's a wonderful hours-long seminar that they recorded yesterday, and it's going to be available to you. The third point is this: fieldwork sits in a broader process of geographical inquiry. For me, whenever the conversations were going on about fieldwork as I saw them on Twitter, I thought in many cases they were too narrowly focused. We can't do fieldwork was the big focus. It's too difficult, it's too time consuming, it's too challenging. Yes, but fieldwork is part of a broader process. And I think that this process of geographical inquiry is so important, because this is how we learn how to think as geographers. We don't just make our theories up sitting in a room, just imagining what the world will be. They're based on actually getting out there. And this whole process of gathering that data and analysing it and presenting it and drawing all the conclusions, that process is a process that is right at the core of what it means to think like a geographer. And the only way that you learn this process properly is to experience it. And the only time that you get to experience it in its totality is in this geographical process of inquiry. So even if fieldwork is difficult, you know, even leaving aside for a moment the hyperlocal options, but even if fieldwork is difficult, this process is important. This process is important also for that sense of progression when the students move on to A-level and the NEA and beyond. They need to have experience of doing this. And the final point really builds on this, and it's finishing off really with a very hopefully optimistic point, because fieldwork, I think, it links to this optimistic future in the world of challenges. If you look at the screen at the moment, what you'll see is many of the issues that we cover in geography. These are the big challenges that face us in the 21st century, but how many of them are negative? And how much of what we do as geography is catastrophizing the world and the difficulties that we face? Now, our students need to know that. But are we sending them out depressed at a world that is dangerous and difficult and challenges that will overwhelm them? Or is our goal to do something more than that? David Alcock in the Teaching Geography Journal in just last autumn wrote an article about progress and optimism in geography. I encourage you to look that up, because there's some very encouraging and very positive things in there. But he talks about this analogy that Hans Rosling put together called the sense of the world being a premature baby in an incubator. We are simultaneously in a bad way. Yes, the challenges are there, but we're also gradually improving. Now, how does this relate to fieldwork? Well, this week is the Esri Users Conference. And Denise, you mentioned that you thought that I was from America. That's because this time last year, this is where I was at, presenting along with some of my students about some of the work that we had done there and experiencing that massive big earthquake, of course. But whenever Jack Dangermond was talking about this just on Monday night when it started, he talked about the challenges, but also how geographers and people that are geospatially literate can be part of the solution. And he put this slide up, and it really struck me about that process of inquiry that we've just been looking at. Look at how many similarities there are. And really what we're trying to do is for our students to be those geospatially literate students who can come into a world where there are people working at all sorts of different places along this process, but all with this goal of moving towards decision making and taking action. The understanding precedes action, but the action brings that sense of optimism. And I think we have an opportunity here then through the fieldwork to connect them to this process of inquiry, to connect them to optimistic ways that we can deal with the problems we're looking at. So those are the points. I'm going to make this presentation available to Denise afterwards. Those are some of the resources I referred to. And that was my attempt to try and persuade you that it is worth doing and worth going to do. Thank you.